Hey folks, in this episode we're going to be learning how to make this particle generator in geometry nodes. It's a versatile generator. It can achieve lots of different things from rain, snow, dust, particle embers. So I'll just show you some of the settings that I've got exposed in the modifier. We can change the density, change the amount of particles. The loop frame number is basically, I've got 480 frames on my timeline and I've typed in 480 here, so if I click that there you'll find that when it restarts it's a perfect loop. It shouldn't jitter at all. I've also got the minimum particle size, maximum particle size to randomize it. I've got the speed of which the particles travel, so at the moment I've got it set to -200, so if I push play we'll change this to -50 and it will slow right down. You can also change the X and Y direction, so it's kind of in a cube domain at the moment. So let's give it a positive value of say 50 on the, not 560, 50 on the X-axis, or -50, turn the other way. The same as with the Y, so we'll go -50 on the Y-axis, and now it's kind of travelling to the camera. We'll take the X off, take the Y off as well. With the Z-axis, if we go into plus figures, so we'll go 50, and then they're rising up, so it could even be bubbles. I've actually got this set to bubbles in a aquarium that I'm working on at the moment, so I think it'll be about a 10-part tutorial series because it's quite a complicated one. So we'll just set this to -50 for now, and that'll be very light, kind of like snow. We've got a noise scale here, so the noise, as you can see, they're not going straight down, they're moving slightly. So if I change this to 0, then they're all going straight down. I'll turn up your noise scale, they start moving about a bit more. If you set your noise value to quite a low value, to say 1, and then turn your wobble up, we get some quite interesting effects going on. It could almost be like in water, kind of flowing with turbulence. I'll just set that to say 1 for now, just for an example. The positive X, negative X, positive Y, negative Y and stuff like that, that represents the domain size. So on the positive axis, we increase the size of the domain. Negative X increases it in a negative value, the same as the Y, so negative Y, plus Y, and same as on the Z, so negative Z. I'll bring that to 0 or near to 0, or you can bring it down, so let's bring it near to 0. And then the plus Z obviously increases the size of the domain. So that's basically that's it in a nutshell. It's going to be quite a complicated particle system, so we're going to be making this node setup here. It's worth pursuing, all the way through, because when you've got this, you can basically mark it as an asset. You never have to make it again, and you can import it into any of your scenes. So without further ado, let's get to it. I'll delete that. I'll delete the particle as well. Also, I've got my screencast keys down here, so if you're wondering what I'm hitting on my keyboard and my mouse, look down to the bottom left, and that will give you a good reference. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to add the particle itself. I'm going to add a mesh and an icosphere. I'll probably keep the subdivision as is. I could turn it down and then we'll add a subdivision surface on there. Got a bit of a slow computer here at the moment, I don't know why. Okay, that will do for that. And then for the actual particle emitter, I'm going to use a mesh cube. I'll then select the cube and we'll add a new geometry node thing on here. So you should have tabs at the top. Just select your geometry node system and then we'll add new. Now we've got this here, so I'm going to give us a bit more breathing room by grabbing that across over to there. Also, I'm going to drag my icosphere into the node setup, so I'm just going to drag it down to here and we'll just leave it here for now. We'll connect that in a bit, and that means I can basically hide the icosphere and we'll just work from this cube now. So the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to add an instance on points. So I'm going to search instance on points. I'm going to add that there, and then going to add a set position node. Set position, we'll give it a bit of breathing space. We're going to have two set positions, in fact, so I'm going to duplicate that. I'll drag that over to about here-ish, and then we're going to add a points node. So search points. We'll add that there. The first thing I'm going to do is probably add my object info straight into the instance. So I'm going to select the geometry, over to the instance. As you can see, it's not smooth, so I'm going to search for set shade smooth. We'll add that into here. I'm also going to be adding points on these noodles. It's going to make this tutorial last a bit longer, but it will help you read the geometry node setup a bit more, just basically for ease of viewing. So we'll do that now. It's going to be a bit finicky, but it will be worth it. I advise you to do this as well, so if you reopen your scene or you import the or append this particle generator into one of your scenes, it will enable you to be able to read your nodes a lot better. It's a good practice to do so. It's kind of a bit of an art as well. I quite like it. So then now I'm going to add a random value node, so search random value. We'll pop that there. I'm going to set the min to 0.025 and the max to 0.1. I'm then going to plug the value into the scale. From here, I'm going to add a vector math. So I think that's under utilities, vector math. And we're going to set this to add, and then I'm going to plug the vector into the position of the set position. I'm going to add a noise texture, so you can go to texture, noise texture, or you can search for it. Set this to 4D, and then the color is going to go into the bottom vector of the add node, and then I'm going to add another vector math. I'll just duplicate this one, so Shift D, and we'll set this to wrap. There we go, and then I'll set the vector into the top vector of the add node. Also, the vector from the wrap node is going to go into the vector of the noise texture, so that will serve as a texture coordinate. I'm then going to add a which way should I go about this? Okay, I'm going to duplicate this vector math node, and I'm going to set it to multiply add. I'm then going to drag the top vector into the wrap. I'm going to add a math node, I think, so utilities math, then math. We'll drop that under the wrap node. It's going to be set to multiply. Yep, we'll duplicate that. We'll bring that down to here. So this top multiply, that's going to be into the W factor, which will be the wobble. And bottom one, we're going to drag that into the scale, so that will be the scale of the noise. In the top socket here, we're going to add a value of 0.1. So I'll have multiply add. Okay, now we're going to add a combine XYZ, so search combine XYZ. We're actually going to use 3 of these. This one is going to serve as the speed, so in here I'm going to type negative, let's say 50, so that will be the particles falling down on the negative axis. If it was plus 50, the particles would be rising upwards. I'll plug this into the top socket of the multiply add node, and we're going to divide the scene time, the frames, by the position. It will make sense as I kind of develop the node setup. At the moment it might not make much sense to you, but all will be revealed. So I'm going to hit Shift A, search for scene time. I'm then going to plug the, oh no, we need to divide, we need a math divide node, so I'm going to duplicate this math node. I'm going to set it to divide. I'm then going to plug the frame into the top value, and I'm also going to plug that into the W factor. So I'm going to plug this into the bottom socket, I believe. Yep, into the bottom socket of the multiply node. I'm then going to duplicate that multiply node. We'll keep it as a multiply, and we'll have the top value set to 0.1. I'm then going to drag from this socket into the top socket of this multiply node. I'm going to shift right strike select, just so we can neaten up this these noodles a bit. Hang on, and I'll do that twice actually, so then we can neaten this up so it's easier to read. I'll drag this across here. From here, hang on, let me just check that I've got that loop set up. Okay, yep. Now I'm going to add a position node and put this under the divide. The divide node will go into the multiplier, so, and then that will be added to the position, which will be divided by the frame number. And this frame number, this will be basically whatever, however many frames you've got in the scene. So I'm just going to type in 480 for now. It doesn't matter so much because all these values are going to be exposed in the modifier itself. So from here, I'm going to add a random value node. So combine XYZ, yep. Then we'll add a random value node. So random value, and this one is going to be set to vector, I believe, if I remember rightly. Yep. So that will be set to vector, and that is going to serve as the offset. Now I'm going to add another 2 combine XYZs. So we'll duplicate this node. I think these are the negative. Yep, these are negative values, so this is going to serve as the domain size, so I'm going to hit -10, and then going to duplicate this node. By the way, to change all of them at the same time, I'm left click, hold, and drag down, and that will select all of the values, and then just hit 10 or whatever domain size that you want. And then we're going to plug this into the random value, so the top one is going to be the negative, which is min or minimum, and the bottom one is going to be the plus values, which will be set to maximum. also going to need to add that into the wrap node. So the negative values will go into the max, and the positive values will go into the minimum. I think I need to neaten this node, these noodles up a bit, because it's a bit difficult to read at the moment. So we'll just bring that to there, bring this up to here, bring this across to here. We'll do the same for this here as well, so maybe around there. So it's a bit finicky, guys, but it's worth doing this just so it's easier for you to see what's going on. Right, you can see where all that's joining up. Okay, let me just check everything. I've got everything correct here. So the wrap, yeah, okay. So that's set to there. Okay, we can start connecting all these sockets up now, I believe. Let me just check I've got my random values. Okay, right, so the density, which is this one here, this is going to serve as how many particles you've got in the scene. So by default I'm just going to set this to 1000. Zoom out a bit, and yeah, these values here, as you can see, it changes the size of the domain. So I'm going to grab my group input. I'm then going to drag the count into the group input. I'm going to hit N and then click group, and then we can rename this. And where I've set the count to 1000 here, it's set it to 1000 on the output here. Oh, hang on, let me undo that. So by default it's set it to 1000 because I set it to 1000 here, which means it's set to 1000 on here, and I can change this number at any point. So we're going to rename the count to, let's call it density. I think we should connect up the loop frame next, so I believe this is the loop frame here. Yep, so I've set the value to 480. You can set it to any number. So like you've got 250 frames in your scene, you set this to 250. It doesn't matter too much because when it's exposed here, we can change the number. This is just the default value. So I'm going to drag that into there. I'm going to rename that to loop frame. And where I had it set to 480 is changed it to 480 there, and default value of 480 there. I'm also going to maybe drag this down just to keep things separated so it's easy to read. And then we'll do the droplet size or the particle size values. So the random value on the scale here, we'll drag that into the group input. So we'll drag the minimum and the maximum, and then just drag this across. So we'll rename this to, say, particle min for particle minimum, and particle max for the maximum size particles. As you can see, it's brought all these attributes or all these values into your modifier. I might just neaten this up as well, so maybe we'll just strike through there, strike through here, drag these down. Oh, hang on. dragging it across for readability. There we go. So that's the particle size. Next, I think we'll do the speed. So the particle speed of which it falls, as you can see, is the values for that. So I'm just going to reset that to 0. It's important to reset this to 0 before you connect this combine XYZ, because sometimes it can mess with the loop time on the scene time. So I'm going to drag the X, the Y, and the Z. I'm going to drag across there. We'll bring this over to here. Maybe drag that to there as well. We'll grab these and we'll bring them down, just so it's kind of a bit more readable. This isn't kind of working as I wanted it, so let me offset some of these. There we go. And we'll call this X speed, Y speed, and Z speed over here. So X speed. I might just duplicate the word speed. So Control C for copy. Go to Y. Control V. Control V. So X speed, Y speed, and Z speed. As you can see, the values are now exposed over here. We'll do the noise scale and wobble next. So the noise scale should be this one here. So I'm going to drag this value. Let me just make sure I get this right. Yeah, okay. So we'll drag this value into here, and then I'm going to type in noise scale. Excellent. So that's the noise scale. And the wobble, I do believe it's the bottom node. Yep. So we'll drag in the bottom node for the wobble, and the wobble is going to be the W factor, which is, you know, another dimension on the noise texture. It's quite a handy thing to have actually. It's quite a recent addition to Blender. Well, I say recent, it's not that recent. So I've added that, and we'll go down to this value here, which is the last one we've added, and we'll call this wobble. By default, I actually want it set to 0, because we don't always want wobble, especially when we first bring it into the scene. So I'll also set it to 0 on the modifier. I'm just going to neaten this up as well a little, guys. So I'm going to add a nodal control point there and there, and on the wobble as well. I'll add one here, I'll add one here, and then I'll just drag this down to below that point. There's no need for this one here for the minute. So Control X to dissolve that. There we go. After the wobble, we're going to add the negative X, and well, we're going to add the domain size to these nodes, to this group input here. So we're going to negative X plus X. So X negative X positive, and then we'll do the same for Y and Z, so Y negative, Y positive, so Y negative, Y positive, and same for the Z values. Excuse me. Z negative, Z positive. Right, and these values are now exposed here. Let's just check that that's working. Yep, so I've got all that okay. I'm probably going to add some control points here as well, because this can get really confusing. So I'll drag some there. Oh. What's going on? Let's just undo those. It's getting quite complicated here. Like, there's a lot to read, so it's quite difficult to get these control points in a decent enough position where you can kind of read where they're going. Kind of looks like a spaghetti junction at the moment. We'll leave it at that. You can neaten that up a bit more if you like, but in a nutshell, that is the tutorial pretty much complete. We'll just have a quick recap. I mean, you know what these settings do, what you should do, because I showed you right at the beginning. So this is the density. These values here is how big the domain's going to be. So on the plus, we increase the size of the domain. On the negative, we decrease, which makes it bigger. The same as on the X. We'll bring that down to a negative larger number and a positive larger number. Same as on the Y value. So increase that. We'll increase. Oh, sorry. Increase that. We'll hit play. There's your particles. Also, you can change, you know, your noise scale. You can change the size. We can change the wobble. Take in mind, if you increase the wobble, it's quite a good idea to decrease the noise. And yep, that's the particle generator in a nutshell. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, folks. If you found any use from it, please consider liking and subscribing to my channel. Thanks for watching.